All right, welcome back. It's still Rapid On. Thank you for staying with us. I hope you had a great time during the 8 to 9 hour. And this morning, we are having a great conversation, as we did promise you yesterday. Just to give you a bit of what's happening, that China has announced plans to eliminate tariffs on all imports from African countries, with which it maintains diplomatic relations in a major shift, of course, a trade policy. Now, the Chinese President Xi Jinping made the announcement in a letter he addressed to African foreign ministers, stating that all 53 African countries with formal ties to Beijing will now receive zero tariff treatment for 100% of tariff lines. Now, this is the same tariff issue that the US and China have been going back and forth and been showing a show of power. And then Africans are getting it on a platter of gold. What does this portend? Should we be excited, or should we take it and say, okay, it's like receiving something from the devil, one hand and the other? Well, we have someone who is going to be having this conversation with us, talking about the China Free Trade Agreement and new policy. We have Daniel Effa. He is a business and global market analyst. We've had him before. We're having now again. It's so great to have you this morning.
Good morning.
I'm really we're having you.
Good morning to you.
Good
morning, Nigeria. Good morning, the FCC. Good morning, everybody. We're still back here at 9 o'clock, and we did promise to have an amazing conversation, like she said. So we're getting right into the conversation without fear or prejudice. I mean, like she rightly said, one would want to ask the question, why exactly is Africa, Nigeria included, of course, getting a tariff-free trade? But before we go on answering that question, tell us the implication of this.
Okay, so basically what China is doing is just to like fill the gap, right? Because before now there is an African Growth and Opportunity Act, right, with the US and African countries, and as at 2025, the US refused to renew the deal, right, because of Trump and his issues, and because of that, there is a gap, right? Because that's always been the world powers has always they've always argued the US, argued Africa as where what's the word? Where and how do we get deals with African countries and all? So that particular conversation is just a trying to like fill up a certain gap that the US has left by saying, okay, let's give you guys a duty free. It's duty when we say tariff free again, it is for the exports.
Okay.
So that means that so how do I explain it? So if I am exporting goods to China, if the tariff is free, what it means is that for Chinese people acquiring the product, it is cheaper for them. It is not like an arrangement whereby the import from China is lesser. No, that's not what it means. So it is actually benefits to China in the real sense, right? But because tariff-free means that because that product is cheaper, there is a likelihood that it will be consumed. The demand will be higher for the product. So for the exporters, it is a good thing. So that is basically the whole idea. Now, when we look at China's trade with Africa, it is in positive net for China, because that means that China exports more to Africa than it imports, right? Then we also now look at the quality of product that is and the value chain of the product, right? About 5 major countries, it's not even in the top 5 of the countries that China really gets goods from, right? It is DRC, South Africa, I think 2 or 3 other countries, and it is majorly resources, majorly raw materials that they now use to convert and create add value to it, and now send back to us as goods, as finished goods. So for China, it is a big win, because whether we like it or not, there is a subtle war or subtle fight between supremacy of who is bigger, economic wise between the US and the China. It's just a continuation of that particular trade war between these two nations. So now Africa is there. Africa it will be a large market because of the population, because of resources. So who is taking hold of African market? I think right now with what China is doing, basically they are the ones.
Already have it. Okay, so there's another angle that I would want us to touch before we go into other perspective. It has been said that over 30 African countries risk losing their duty-free privileges under the U.S. African Growth and Opportunity Act, which is a key trade agreement that has come under scrutiny, of course, in recent years.
Yeah.
Let us now look at these aspects. Are we going to be seeing I mean, Nigeria, of course, is in the mix.
Yes.
I know that Martha cannot wait to ask about what are we even exporting? What do we even have?
Yeah, okay.
But let us touch this U.S. Aspect now, because if China is doing this, it therefore means that African countries would also have a problem with the U.S. Owns policy. Yeah. Which side do we really want to lean on? Which side is the most beneficial for us?
Okay, so for if it is Nigeria as the case study, I think with data shows that we do more than 6 times of what we do with China in terms of exports with the U.S.
Okay.
Right. As it stands, even the Dangote refinery still get demand, still get crude WTI from the U.S. So, and we still send some of the finished product to the U.S. So, as it stands, we do more numbers, about $6 billion or thereabout, in terms of worth of export to China, to the US, in comparison to the $1 billion we do with China. So, in the real sense, for us, for Nigeria, like this particular duty-free conversation doesn't necessarily come as a very big thing for us. Yeah. For countries like the DRC, like South Africa, it is a big deal for them. But because they do more business with China. So for us, it is, when you look at 6 billion to 1 billion, you're like, okay, would we risk losing a $6 billion partner in comparison to a 1 billion? So that is where we are.
But looking at how well Nigerians affiliate more to China, I mean, we can't take that aspect from us.
We import literally everything.
Everything from China.
Toothpick.
You see, made in China. so you from that.
So in the context of this conversation, just like what happened with what Trump did with the trade war. So with the old tariff thing.
Yes.
So what he said was simple. If we receive more of your goods than we give you, we will put a tariff on your products. So for us too, it's like that too, right? Where do we make more FX? It is from the US. The goods from China, can it be substituted? It can.
Yes.
Okay.
The reason the old China dominance is a function of how China has played its foreign policy. Again, giving African countries loans that are basically infrastructural loans, that is how China has dominated, has played, it has always been give me, I give you. It's a very good approach because it has built that economy to what it is today. But for us right now, what's conversation? What is much more important for us right now? Is it the imports or the exports? And I tell you that as it stands, it is the export, because that is where now in the last couple of months we've not heard any Chinese firm say, okay, I want to buy products from Dangote refinery. But we've heard Saudi Arabia say they want to buy. We've seen US companies buy. So who would we really?
And I think that's why I understand the situation with Trump and the Chinese government.
Yes.
The Chinese people are people that will creep on you before you know it. We have seen it happen.
Exactly.
With, was it Ogun State or Oshun, where they signed a treaty with these people and asked them to come and mine certain materials for a period of time, where we had issues of our jets being seized in whatever country we went. So this country, they are very slick people, I would say. You know, they look for a loophole and capitalize on that loophole. Now, in relation to that, this treaty or this whole tariff free, what are the strategic motivations behind China tariffs expectations of Nigeria? Because again, you cannot give a person something free if you don't intend to get something from that person. Is this a case of a collateral damage between what is happening between China and the US? Just look for a way out of the situation.
Okay, so the issue with China and the US, I think I've always tilted towards the fact that China will always, at the end of the day, win. I know most people will argue with the US is the world power, but it would be hard to beat someone that doesn't necessarily in quote have pride or shame. You get. So I was doing an analysis of how China beats this economy. In the initial stage, what they were doing was simply creating a copy version of any real product cheaper. That was the concept. Right? Till they started now creating their own. For example, see the concept of EV cars. Tesla is the company we know in quote as a major player in EV cars. But if you go to China, you will see over 50-60 brands of cheaper EV cars. Right? And that is why I was really looking at what Trump was doing, because then Americans are tilting towards those cheaper cars. Right? Even now, the iPhone they talk about, they move factories there so that they can get a cheaper labor for them to import here. So the way China has played into the global economy is not something that we can easily eliminate like that. Now, talking about Africa, because Africa is a peculiar issue, because whether it is the US, whether it is China, it is the same approach. It is about exploiting, it's about taking our raw materials and get. So if Africa, for example, has been developing its product up until almost semi-finished product, and they still take it is a different conversation. But it's always been about the raw materials. For example, started the mining conversation, for example. I am still, and that's why I still somehow blame our leaders, because by now we should not be going for bilateral conversations with nations that most likely the trade agreement with us would be so amount of raw materials. It should be about, okay, this is, bring your companies here, right? Bring your companies here. This is our raw materials. Develop the raw materials here. Take them back to your country. Let it be an import to your country. We will take it will be a sort of revenue to us. That way, it's a deal. We can now take any form of duty free, any form of tax free obligations. We can do that. So that should be the conversation, if it was meant to be a fair conversation. Right? But because it is not, it is all about the resources, then you will get this kind of, because now African countries are now licking their lips. Oh, it is duty free. Then let's keep pushing. You shouldn't be pushing, and that is what what do you call it? Agencies like institutions like the AFDB, African Development Bank, has been echoing. We've seen interviews where the MD, Dr. Adesina, was always talking about the fact that why do African countries still take agro produce? You get still export agro produce when you can add value to this produce and send them there. Because at the end of the day, for example, cocoa, for example, we farm it here, put it in bags, take it to Europe. They bring it back to us in chocolate, way more expensive. And we still spend add end money on this, and it still adds to our inflationary pressure. So that is the underlying issue, and you cannot. There's no emotions in this. It is purely business. They see that African countries are not ready to do that, and they are simply just exploiting and taking advantage of whatever weakness that we show. So it is fair. All is fair in love and war. Exactly.
So when you were speaking earlier, you did mention something about foreign policy. I've always talked about Nigeria's foreign policy. I've always said that Nigeria's foreign policy is for that Christmas, and it has been for that Christmas since, if my history serves me well, it has been like that for a very long time. Don't you think that this is a time for Nigeria to review its foreign policy? Because if we look at the numbers, in the light of the whole tariff exports, Chinese exports to Africa, has surged by 12.4% in the past 5 months of this year, and it is reaching about a record of 963 billion yuan. That's about $134 billion. That is massive. That's according to the Chinese foreign. So everything is geared towards what benefits them. But when it comes to Nigeria, I don't speak about African countries, and because I'm sure they have their ways of doing things, and it's so disastrous to know that even our foreign affairs minister was still talking about appealing to China to include Nigeria in a broader zero tariff. So we just like the word zero tariff, but we are not reviewing. Don't you think this is the time for us to review our foreign policy to what can serve us in terms of economic matters?
So This is a very, very, very good question. We don't even have an economic direction. You get so. You say foreign policy, you're like that is too complex. Now, if you follow Nigeria's foreign policy, up until actively up until 2006, you realize that 2007. That's when President Obasanjo ended his administration. You realize that there was a direction. There was. Yes, so we were always the old giant of Africa thing was not. It was not a mere conversation. It was because of the role we were playing in the African continent, right? Even up until the setup of the changing of OAU to AU, we were pivotal role, and the whole idea was this: Africa first. The whole idea was that Africa, we should be representing Africa in any major conversation. The growth of Africa should be prioritized, right? Now, it brings me back to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. AFCFTA is that kind of foreign policy that we should be driving.
Okay. Tell us about the policy.
Yeah, so the whole idea is Africa should have a free trade, it should be a free trade zone where goods can move from Nigeria to any part of Africa on a duty-free free tariff, movement of people, movement of goods and services. Up until now, this has not been ratified by countries. And you know why? Because there is nobody to take that leadership role. South Africa is in bed with BRICS. That is why it is majorly tied to whatever is happening with China. Yeah, they are in the same economic bloc. There is Morocco and Egypt also have their own European ties, right? So, but Nigeria, we are confused between whether it's China or US at any point in time because of whatever we want to gain. So, but if we are leading the charge, of course, we've started seeing moves around. We've seen, at least kudos to the Minister of Trade. We've started seeing moves around the FCTA, but we've also been a big issue to that project. That's why people they are not really taking us serious as they should. We woke up one day and closed our borders in 2019 for a major player like ours. How did a coup happen at our backyard, right? In Niger, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, and we don't have an influence. See, as I cited 2006, because this kind of thing would not have happened then. It is not possible that the then president would not have been able to either stop it or have conversations with the leader. That was how strong we were, and those things grew weaker because, of course, factors. We were economic wise, internally we were no longer as strong. Then we didn't have enough clout in terms of leadership to lead the African continent, and that is the basic problem, because we cannot go to the US or have a bilateral meeting with Korea or with China and be the boss. We are always but in Africa we have that boss rule, and for every boss rule you try to make sure foreign policy benefits you one way or the other, and a free trade agreement would benefit us. Why? Because we have a lot to sell. Imagine going to the African continent and having an arrangement with African leaders, and we can easily hold 2, 3, 4 different CEOs. Our banks are moving into East Africa, moving to West Africa. We have Dangote finally. Dangote is doing its own with cement. We have Innocent, for example, producing cars. We have a lot of these things that we can actually sell to the continent. But we have the roadblocks, even internally, the economic roadblocks, the issues are so much, right? Because you cannot, for example, West Africa, for example, we still have tariff issues with Niger. The reason why
rams were expensive
exactly was because of that. So these are the things that you cannot do that by just sitting down. You need to go and have conversation. When was the last time you saw our president do an African tour? These were things that we're doing years back.
That gave us an advantage.
So, Mr. Daniel, you see, you just made a very vital point, which is it's almost like our leaders are focused on having a European tour. You know, always going on vacation to where there is snow and the likes. Maybe there's no snow in Africa, so they don't like that atmosphere.
I didn't say that.
But well, it's so the thing now is, within Africa, at what point do you think we lost? Because you're saying 2007, you're saying after,
yes.
But I am not exactly sure that was when it happened.
Yes. So I think,
and then how do we get back there? Because the truth is, we are still known as the giant of Africa, even though some people try to remove the G.
Theoretically.
Right.
Theoretically.
The G and the I. Some people still try to remove the G and the I. But we have come through, we have done enough for Africa to remain in that position for as long as possible. So, two things I have to ask. How do we get back there? First of all, before we go back to the issue of the trade, how do we get back to that position? And how can we reassess our foreign, because the truth is if we don't work on our foreign policy as a nation, I think we'll start having countries like Cameroon give us bad eye.
So I think that over time the quality of leadership has reduced. So
Tinubu will not like this.
No,
It's obvious.
It is a
There are
fact.
statistics to
So
prove.
it is a fact, right? Because I was doing analysis. I was having a conversation on the other day. I was having analysis on when we're talking about 2 years of the current administration, and I was citing the same issues. This was where we were. 2023 was just like where we were in 1999. Economic chaos, we get lack of structure, a lot of bad issues. Figures were even more terrible because we just left military rule, right? The data was bad. And what the president then did was that we started debt restructuring, went to the Paris Club, got a debt forgiveness. By the time he was living in 8 years, we had cleaned up our books. We had excess. So, and in that same period, we were major part of the creating the African Union. We're already talking about having a single currency, having a single economy. At then, so how did we have a single government that did internally was restructuring the nation? We had investment coming, FDI comes in with telcos. We had a lot going on internally, and we're still playing our role externally as the giant of Africa. So how do we do that? That is why I'm saying that the quality has reduced. It is not to spite anybody, it's just a fact. So now we can't even get our own home right. We are still struggling with a lot of issues, right? So I was listening to an interview yesterday, and this is someone that has done 25-30 years of giving African businesses investment, and was like, it is, if you can succeed in a business in Nigeria, you can succeed anywhere. To tell you how bad it is to even survive as a business. So when you look at those things, we've not been improving in the metrics, right? Ease of doing business is still a struggle here. So when you look at the internal issues, you realize that it is hard to now go. Is it Kenya you want to call to the table? Kenya that is improving faster, right? Is South Africa you want to call to the table that they don't even think that they're looking at it? What are we doing? See, for example, we have a gas pipeline project that is meant to run through Morocco. What are we? Because then this thing has to run through countries like Niger, right? But have we up until now? Yes, we say that country. Niger, Burkina Faso, and all they are now under military rule. But does that mean we shouldn't still reach out to have a conversation with these guys?
Okay.
So because then you will need them for this pipeline to pass through.
So it's in how they call it, international relations.
Yes, exactly. So the foreign policy has to first be it's in terms of African countries, it has to be like have a fatherhood figure. If you have a fatherhood figure, you wouldn't be fighting every other person. You would not.
Sorry.
Yes.
I get your point, right? Yes. We do have WhatsApp number that's going to be on the screen in case you want to be a part of the conversation. You want to send us a message or something you want to ask I guess the question. You can use the WhatsApp number that is going to be appearing on the screen right about now. You might want to say this is the other part of me coming out, but my question would be, Nigeria has done a lot for a lot of these African countries. True. I mean, South Africa, Ghana, even our nearby Cameroon and the rest. We have even done Benin Republic, Togo. We have done a lot for these countries. Yes. We have sacrificed our people for these countries. Yes. Now, don't you think that even if, now I know everything has to be spelled out, dotted lines and the rest, but don't you think that we've done enough for them to even know that, okay, this country have done enough for us. Yes, they may not be how they were before, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't also give them favorable conditions.
But before you go on,
Yeah.
Not for them.
No, I want to.
Okay,
Let me.
that.
So the question is, what conditions have we asked for?
Exactly.
Do you get?
So, and you said that we have
so
not
let me
asked
give.
for anything.
Let me give an example.
I mean, I remember we talking about the issue of we want to have, even within Africa, Nigeria cannot. You can't even freely travel.
But you don't demand.
let
You
me-
need to demand
Let
it.
me give
need to
a
demand it
perfect
sometimes.
example. A perfect example was 2019 border closure. So what was the issue? The issue is that we were not at fault, right? We have, for example, we gave because we wanted to improve local rice production. We increased tariffs, right? And importers from Thailand, Singapore, and the rest would take this rice, would take it to Benin Republic, Togo. They have almost like very low tariffs, very low tax on imports, particularly for rice, as low as maybe 10-5%. I can't get the right figures now. So those guys will get it to those countries, and those countries will rebag the rice and send it down here and smuggle it down here, right? So that's basically what they were doing. So you see those two countries, you see importation figures very high for a country that is combined figures not up to 30 million, right? Not up to Lagos, right? So that is an unfair trade practice in the context of WTO. If we take them to WTO, we should win the case easily. So, but what did we do? We closed the borders. So what does closing the borders then mean? That means that even our own goods that were moving towards West Africa, after Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Senegal, we closed the borders to those stuff too. We had goods lying waste at our borders. Same thing happened at the other side, in the northern aspect, in Sokoto and the rest. Same scenario. Sir. We did the same thing. You get, of course, we said because they were bringing in weapons, and I'm like, okay. Also complained the fact that they were taking petrol. I'm like, okay, these are very physical products that they are not spiritual. You can see them. So if you cannot stop smuggling has always been is a job that has existed since time immemorial. Yes. It is the job of your customs to stop smuggling. But don't deprive other businesses, your own businesses, from enjoying. So what would have happened was a proper conversations with these countries. Call them to order. If we give you guys power supply. We give you power supply.
Our president was giving Niger here.
Yeah, so
constant power.
So what exactly is happening? Why are you guys engaging in unfair trade practices? Why are you having this and this and this is a conversation? If you don't, we will sanction you. That is what a Trump did. It's basically just this is what we are going to do. But what we did was that we just closed the border.
Yeah. And like you said, negotiations are very important, which is one thing we don't see in the Nigerian government. I remember one time when the US government announced that they were going to give, I've forgotten one of these countries. They said they were going to put a ban on that country and what have you. The country responded by banning the US as well. So it called for a conversation because the US also knew what they were going to get from that country.
Exactly.
That country also knew what they were giving to the US.
Canada did that to them too.
So that banning called for a conversation. They had a conversation. Now my question will be, how
Togo and Benin Republic couldn't have banned us. It's not possible. Because that economy, those economies feed off of the demand from Nigerian market. It is just like this. That's what. So it was a function of call them to order and they will stop, and they don't stop, you sanction them.
Are we referring to the same countries that when they were leaving the ECOWAS bloc, they, even when Tinubu, who is the chairperson there now, did say, oh, if you guys leave, we're going to do that, they still left.
We're not at the position where we can call them to order anymore.
So that is exactly what I'm saying. Like foreign policy, like you cited, like you asked me earlier, is something that is a continuous process, and it's a function of the value you present. So what we've seen in the last 10-15 years is that these countries that don't take us serious anymore, they've seen a rise in their economy because of the failures of our own economy. We've seen businesses move all the way to Cote d'Ivoire to set up factories because it was expensive to set it up here. If you go to Lagos, major industrial sites in Lagos, Ogba, you go to Ota, you go to Agbara, all those places where 15 years ago when I was growing up, you were seeing factories almost every street. Like you could see number of people that troop into those areas because that is where they work. Right now, the numbers is something else. It is but empty companies, empty buildings. So those companies are now in those countries. So when as a leader, right, of a country maybe like Togo and you see those figures, you are excited that let Nigeria just keep doing what they are doing.
Yes.
So that you can keep making money off them. And that is just it. So if we sort out all those issues, there is up until now, what am I saying? Up until now, we still import fish products, fisheries, all the fish you eat is imported from this same.
They'll tell
products.
you. I mean, it's very obvious, some of these things. But let's move on from this a bit to talk about harnessing our own natural resources. Because the reason in the first place we see people coming to exploit what we have here is because we do not use it.
Yeah.
I was giving her an example of cow skin. We eat it, and we could use that to produce lots and lots of products. Sometime last year, I saw...
You meant pomo.
Yeah. You had to. So we eat it. It's a Nigerian delicacy. And I'm not saying completely end eating of that, but regulate it, right? Now, aside that, we see that our natural resources are being clamped on because we also do not harness it. I'll take Burkina Faso for an example. We see them everywhere all over the news. What they did was close their borders. And as they closed their borders, they had a plan, which was to harness the resources that are within their community. Yeah. How do you think Nigeria can do this? Because we have all of these resources, but proper use or utilization of these products would lead to exporting. So
I think that that's why I said earlier that we don't even have an economic plan, right? Because at the end of the day, we have so much of these resources, right? Even now, right, the amount of coal we have, if we don't care about the climate change conversation, because it won't affect us yet, at least yet. If we harness only coal that we have in Enugu, we can use coal to produce enough power supply for us. So over time, that's why I would usually propose that we have an economic plan, a 30 years, 40 years economic plan signed into law that will be in phases, and every leader that comes must abide by it. And it's not going to be changed. It's not going to be, because that is what China did. China did it in 2000. That is basically what they done in 25 years. See what they've done with their economy. Because how do we have so much resources and we don't use the resources? I can't, you can't, if economically explain to me, I would not understand. See crude, see how long it took us to set up a refinery. In fact, we don't even have a refinery. It is even a privately owned refinery. To set it up to be able to just take it from, because see the number of resources we can get from crude. That is why Dangote refinery is excited, because only petrochemical aspect of crude will make him billions of dollars. Yeah. So now imagine every other resources we have. We have limestone, okay, that is being used by private businesses. Still, we have gold. For example, gold. See how quiet we are on gold.
Because certain people.
No.
See how quiet we are on gold. Meanwhile, we have gold.
Conversation on gold coming up. I mean, thanks to is it the delay? He has been doing something when it comes to gold.
In terms of how valuable gold is in the conversation. See what Ghana did with gold. The new president, the number of FX they've made, Ghana they see this is probably the strongest currency right now in the world because of that sale of gold reserve they did, right? So we have these resources. We are not a country lacking resources. We are just a country lacking the right approach to these resources. So because we look at a lot
right approach or right personnel to get the idea to harness these resources.
So the thing is, I don't think we lack personnel. I don't think so.
Simple implementation.
So this is the thing. This is why I think we don't lack personnel. I think that if you ask an average technocrat in power right now, they will tell you the problems. They will tell you what they plan to do, right? So the approach is that we always think 4 years. Okay. I guess what I'm saying. So we don't think long term. Okay. That's what I'm saying. There is no economic plan for 20, 30, 40 years that we are going to be following the step by step. It is just 4 years. As soon as it's 4 years, So everything. So everybody wants to score political points to be able to come back the 4 years or be able to. So it has always been about that, because if it's about the economic plan, you wouldn't mind, because why will I be in government and there is no funds, right? But I'm saying let us do a road to Calabar, something that can be something like a 30, 40 year plan. Why not just put as a 40-year plan, and the current issues, which is to implement a full fiscal reform, why not just let us set up that structure and let the next 4 years take care of itself? Let's set up the right, why trying to score enough points in a 4-year period that is just about just grow, and you will grow. It is not so. That's basically what has happened in Nigeria. So when we get into those bilateral meetings and someone says, "Don't worry, I'll bring FPI or $5 billion," you quickly take it, because that is we're thinking now.
No.
We're thinking next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and this is what those countries have done. Do you know that in 2000s, the Chinese government, the Indian government sent children, right, to the West to learn. They are now 20 years after, these guys are leading tech. It was always a plan. It was not something that just fell off. It was a plan. So why can't we start doing the same thing for us?
Now you're talking about how the Chinese government send these people. You forget that the mindset, ideas, values and all in this part of the world is different. For example, you do that in Nigeria, you may not be able to account for these 20 people that you will send to the abroad.
No, but the government
some of them will not return.
But the government didn't need to bring them back. They had a reason to go back to
That's
the
what
country.
I'm saying. The values, because the average Asian man, the average Chinese man or Japanese man or something, he does not believe in being there. Do you get? He still desires to go back to his country.
Are you sure?
Do you think
yes.
Are you sure?
No, let me also ask you, do you think a Nigerian man also wants to be there?
No,
wants to go back?
He will want to be there for as long as possible, because he believes
But do you know
things
that
are not working in Nigeria. And now that this mindset.
Do you know
say,
statistics recently said?
I not be Jesus Christ. They go there all right.
But statistics recently said that we have more of Indians over there than we have Nigerians.
No.
And this is the reason.
No.
This is the reason.
Now, we have lots of Indians. In fact, we had a talk when we had the migration conversation some time back. Nigerians are not even the highest when it comes to moving out.
Yes.
We have the Indians.
Yeah.
I'm not referring to Indians right now. I mentioned values.
Yes.
And I mentioned the way these people think. It's way different from the way an average African and Nigerian think. And so something like that can easily walk over there.
Okay, so let's.
So sending people.
Okay, so let's do.
Even ordinary artists carry their personnel and travel. Some of them want to miss the bus and remain there.
Okay, so this is the thing.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, so this is
let's
the thing.
Respond.
This is the thing. Let's do. There's the statistics of China in 2000. I think the average. I think the GDP per capita was about maybe $1,000 in 2000. In 2025, it's about maybe 25,000. So what does that mean? It means that as an economy, China has actually grown. So in fact, you can't even get cheap labor anymore in China, which was usually the quote for most countries. Countries move towards Vietnam now for cheap labor. Why am I citing this? I'm citing that Chinese people will want to go back now. Why? Because the economy has improved. We do travel out of the country because, in quote, greener pastures, and the country you left is even worse than when you left it. So who comes back to that? You must really be you must really have a conversation with Jesus Christ, like face to face, for you to say, I want to come. In fact, people still struggle, right, to come back. But meanwhile, remember, it was not like this 10, 15 years ago. People were coming back in their numbers. We were getting a lot of FDIs. Coming back, come and set up in Nigeria because the economy was looking good, because we had people there, people from the World Bank, handling our economy. So it was the perception was better, and that is why I'm saying that yes, people can travel, right? They can actually live. The economy is not doing, but if the country is getting better and we are doing what we should be doing, people would always they will not just come back. They'll come back with skill. They'll come back with even value, even funds. So, but now, the people we are here are saying ease of doing business is terrible, but you want someone that is out there that's
already thriving
to come back. That is the difference, and that is why, again, I personally, I've had conversations with people that have traveled. Left to them, nobody really wants to travel. In fact, if you take a survey of 100 people, you realize that 90 people are saying, if Nigeria is okay, what am I doing here? Yeah, it's cold. Yes, I have a lot of reasons to tell you why. Yes, nobody, there's no social life, nothing. But because it is not really pleasant with an average. See figures from 2023 till now. Price levels has gone almost 100%. Right? You cannot. Someone earning 100,000 is struggling to survive. In fact, that shouldn't even be our minimum wage right now. Yeah. But we can't even pay the 70K that is even the minimum wage. Do you understand? So you see how. So if that other person wants to travel and that person is, in fact, someone has left 2022 is happy that thank God I didn't meet this. Yeah.
And look at the Calabar Coastal Highway. A lot of people had come at that time. Those businesses that were demolished there, billions of naira were put in there. And
business is perception.
Yes, at the time when that happened, a lot of them were like, I wanted to invest in Nigeria and I was told not to do that. And I gave it a chance and it ended up in shambles. And that's exactly why a lot of people might never come back to invest in this country. But
I pray they come back. I pray that we get it right.
They may, if the country does not get better. So yes, let's talk about, on the papers today, we see that inflation record, sharpest annual decline in a year, drops 22.97%. Let's talk a bit about that.
Okay, so I think it's expected. We've gotten to our eyes. I think 2024 probably is the highest we've seen inflation in years. And that's because of the different shocks, the dollar issue, currency stability, the subsidy removal. So what we'll be seeing definitely is a slide in inflationary pressures. And to explain, right, the data is like 22.9, I mean. Yeah. Right. So it is not that inflation is reducing. Okay. It is just that inflation is not moving at the same pace it was. Yeah. So how do I explain it? Month over month, we're still about maybe 1.83%, and so that means that goods actually did increase, but at 1.83%. Yeah. Right, and when you look at the total, like the headline inflation year over year is about 22.9. It means that from last year, same time last year, food inflation was about 40% or thereabouts. Yeah. So, and now it is about 22%. So what it means is that from last year's figure, we've only done 20-something% increase in inflation. Because people would see the figure and are like, no, it is a lie. Food is still expensive. No, that is basically how to interpret inflationary data, right? And it will steadily decline if there is no shocks to increase it. Now, what are the possible shocks that we can face? And I think that to some extent, let's give kudos to the CBN for stabilizing the FX, right? Okay. Stabilizing, putting structure on the FX has created a bit of good perception for businesses that would import, that would engage in foreign activity, in foreign exchange, and we've seen that growth, we've seen that stability, and it has really helped in terms of managing the inflationary pressures that we had. The issues that might come also is crude oil prices. As soon as crude oil prices are rising right now, there's a likelihood that petrol prices might also rise. Okay. If that happens, we know that usually is an inflationary pressure counter. It always puts pressure on inflation because of the way our economy is structured. Also, we still have the issues with Benue, for example. Somehow will play into food production. Yeah. I've always said, I've had people argue a lot about the fact that data comes out and it is finance is the problem of farmers in Nigeria, and I tell them it is has always been insecurity. Yeah. And this keeps happening, and that usually keeps putting pressure on our food supply, and that supply issue is what has gotten us here, right? In terms of the pressure we face with inflation from 2020 up until now, and that has not been solved, and that is still a big problem. So in the nearest future, what we'll still be seeing for inflationary worries is still about our supply chain issues. We are not producing enough.
Okay. Thank you so much for breaking that down. I mean, because when you see that on the news most times, you're trying to understand, you're trying to comprehend what does that mean exactly. 22.9%, it keeps increasing, and the interpretation might not exactly be what
exactly. So people would feel that it is MBS is lying. No, of course, it's an estimate, but it's just to tell you that it is not reducing. It is just this is the percentage increase after this time. Basically.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daniel. I think that we've had a great conversation this beautiful morning, and talking about the trade. And so for those of you who are excited about China's announcement. I think you should just take a breather.
Take a pause.
Just calm down.
Yeah.
Everything will be all right, I would say. I did have one question, though, even though our time is off. But I think that's something we can talk about afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I think our those at this corridor, they need to come back to the table, talk about how we can regain our respect and our economic power. Because the truth is this: now we get money, get power.
True.
If you don't,
So you have answered it. That's how to gain our respect.
Exactly.
Boost the Nigerian economy.
but we have money in this country. Oh.
We do. That's
We have
not a
money,
lie.
so they should respect us. We
Do
are
you know?
rich.
Do you know that I saw somebody from Kano State who was using leather. He paraded his goods or whatever in New York Fashion Week or what have you, and those were exquisite designs, like exquisite designs. He started from Kano State here, and now he's into the Western community because there's no favorable environment for him to build a market that will thrive over here. Let's say he builds an industry here,
And they will tax him.
and and other countries come to get the natural. It's either they start to source natural resources from him to do the same thing that he does, or buy the products that he sells and takes to other parts of the country. As it is, even an average Nigerian cannot afford one belt that Wilson sells because he has taken it out of Nigeria and is now thriving out of Nigeria. So one belt can be like 100 or 200,000. So an average Nigerian afford what is made in Nigeria?
You're talking about the belt being 100,000. You know people are buying Labubu for 20,000.
No, I'm just trying to say it's an indigenous product.
So
It's an indigenous
his
product.
point he's raising is that if something is done here, Nigerians should be able to afford it. Two factors: either Nigerians don't earn enough to afford it, or that business is not being supported by the government enough to provide a cushion for Nigerians to demand for it. But either way, I really don't even care if Nigerians cannot afford the product, as long as he can add the business here, export here, and give us the dollars. That is what we really need.
The economy will thrive, and we might be able to afford it. So
Exactly.
the ripple effect of that is us being able to afford it still.
At the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, what we can do is to analyze and give our honest suggestions and solutions, right? The ball still falls in their court for them to do the right thing, because the truth is this: just this last weekend, I saw several businesses that they had to put out a notice of closure. Imagine running a business for like 5-6 years, and then one day you just say, no, I can't, this business cannot survive anymore, we have to close. And we saw that happen between 2019 and 2023. We saw that a lot happening, people closing down their businesses because it wasn't easy. Ease of doing business in this country is something that, Martha, you would agree with me. Before we take you off, thank you so much, Mr. Dan. Let me give you a high five.
Thank you so
That's
much.
a souvenir. All right. So, I mean, it's been a great conversation. And so, Martha, you will agree with me that ease of doing business in this country is not exactly easy. A sort of production, but on the other hand, it's something that we're still suffering. And so, it would... You're laughing.
I'm just saying because it might interest you to know that I started like a business 3 years before now, and it didn't work. So I understand when you say someone running a business now it has like 0.something% chance of survival. So it's really understandable.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. And it has been a great time.
All right. Thank you so much again for joining us on the show. And yes, of course, you can visit us on all our social. I wonder why Cynthia wants me to do this today, which is something she likes to do. It's her tradition. But anyways, let's get on with it. You can follow us on all our social media.
I'm excited to watch. Go ahead.
Cynthia, it's not that. Come on. You can follow us on all our social media platforms at Official Rapid TV. Of course, you can rewatch on YouTube.
Okay, get your paper and write this down. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It has been a great time from 7 to 10. I do hope that we've made your morning a pleasant one. Don't forget that you can follow us on all our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, X, and on TikTok, if they were not exactly dancing, but we have great information right there for you. YouTube is right there, and of course, this conversation and many other conversations will be uploaded, and they are right there on our YouTube handle. your official Rapid TV. So do subscribe. And of course, you can watch us from anywhere in the world. www.rbnradiotv.com. My name is Cynthia Agbo.
And this is Martha Alu. You can call me Martha. Until tomorrow.